The book of Acts tells the story of the early church, but ironically, very rarely do the stories take place inside a building. In the times of the early church, the church was nothing like it looks like today, but the things we learn in Acts can teach us something about what it means to be the church today, in a changing and a difficult world. Welcome, friends, to the latest installment of Series 66, where we're making our way through the Bible and doing a small devotion on each book of the Bible. Today we're into the New Testament, book number 5, the book of Acts. The book of Acts tells the story of how the early church came to be and how the disciples went all around the known world at the time, telling the story of Jesus and the power that he had to change lives and make a difference. The one particular passage and story that I want to tell you about today comes in Acts chapter 5. It's a really remarkable time where the apostles were doing teaching in the area of a very specific and religious center. And Peter specifically was being persecuted for the work that he was doing. And he'd been jailed multiple times. And the religious leaders of the day were trying to figure out how to stop Peter and the other disciples from doing the work that Jesus had directed them to do. And they're in prison, and the Sanhedrin, which was the ruling council at the time, was meeting together. And a gentleman on the Sanhedrin by the name of Gamaliel, again, an enemy to the church, had a very profound and important statement to make in Acts chapter 5, verses 38 and 39. It says this: "Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leaders of the church, leaders of the time, leave these men, Peter and the others, alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is from human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will only find yourselves fighting against God." This reminds us of an important thing that we will always experience in the church. There will be pushback. Pushback inside and outside the church from things that we try to do to advance the things that God is doing. The book of Acts, as I said, was written at a time before church buildings and Sunday services and the things that we learn about church today. If the book of Acts was written today, it'd be written very differently. But I imagine that even if it was written 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, it would also be written very differently. The point is that the movement of God encourages us, invites us to change and to look at things differently. One of my favorite stories about leaning into the things that God would want us to do comes from D.L. Moody, who was a wonderful evangelist in the 1900s. And he was teaching some younger students and younger pastors about the church and about how to be leaders in the church. And these younger leaders had an initiative that they were wanting to present to the deacons of the church. And on the night in which they were going to do that, they gathered in the sanctuary for prayer. And they invited D.L. Moody to come and pray with them. As they knelt at the altar praying about their presentation and praying about how they could convince the elders that this is what should happen, D.L. Moody prayed this prayer. He said, "God, if this program is of your will, bless it, encourage it, and make it succeed. But God, if it is not your will, please help it to fail miserably." Those men were all shocked at his prayer. They couldn't understand why Moody would pray for failure. But his prayer was profound. His prayer was important. His prayer echoed the words of Gamaliel, who said, "If things that we do is of human origin, it will fail and fall short. But if it's of God, it cannot fail." My friends, Jesus told us that the church was his idea, that the church was built on his promise and his plan, and nothing in heaven or earth would ever be able to overcome it. We've lived through difficult times. We've had difficult moments where we think that the church is failing, falling short, and not living up to its potential. While this might be true, one thing that is not true that we sometimes convince ourselves of is that the church is done. The church is not over. The church is still God's idea. The church is still something we want to do, what he wants us to do. And I encourage you at some point to read through the book of Acts and see the things that God did through the people of faith, but also to see around us and see that the book of Acts literally is still being written today because God is still at work. God is still moving, and God's church is still his idea. I hope this has blessed you today, and I hope you have some time to read through the book of Acts and learn how God is working in your life too. God bless you. Have a great day.